Welcome to Cerebral Women in Paris Art Talks podcast. I'm Phyllis Hollis, your host. Years ago, after hearing an artist say art will save us, my intellectual curiosity was sparked, and I began a journey to understand exactly how. Through conversations with visual artists and the professionals who support them, I explore how art helps us see our history, our culture, our lives, and the experience of others in ways no other medium can. Capturing these voices is essential. They remind us of the power of art and the importance of noticing life's simple beauty. And now, here in Paris, a city that has long welcomed the daring, the dreamers, and the defiant, I continue these conversations where art breathes, questions, and reminds us that creation itself is an act of liberation. Welcome and enjoy Cerebral Women in Paris. In this episode, I feature Laurena Finéus, a Haitian-Canadian artist born and raised in Ottawa, Ontario. Her practice explores representation of Black geographies, maroon ideologies, and migratory patterns. She investigates themes of statelessness, land, and emotional fugitivity, beginning with the Haitian migration crisis that unfolded from the 1980s to the present. Laurena holds an MFA from Columbia University and a Bachelor of Fine Arts from the University of Ottawa. Her work has been exhibited at the Shed in New York, the Brooklyn Museum, the Hudson River Museum, the Ottawa Art Gallery, to name a few. Her work is part of several private and public collections internationally, including the Canada Council Art Bank, the City of Ottawa Art Collection, Manulife Global, and Google. She has received numerous awards, including the 2024 Saunderson Prize, the 2023 Helen Frankenthaler Foundation Grant, the Elizabeth Greenshields Foundation Grant, the Ottawa Arts Council, IBPOC Emerging Artist Grant, amongst others. Laurena's work has been featured in Just to Pose, Essence, Hyperallergic, Forbes, and Sheer Worldwide magazine. She is currently based in Brooklyn, New York. Please visit cerebralwomen.com for her expanded bio and enjoy. Laurena, welcome to Cerebral Women Art Talks. I'm delighted to have you.
Thank you so much.
When did you realize that you're a visual artist?
I would say coming into visual art was always something that I tell people found me more than I went to find, actually, almost like a vocation of sort. Because even in deciding to go for my master's 4 years ago, I was working and also doing my practice at the same time for the longest time after I did my BFA. And I knew that I needed to really dedicate myself fully to the work, no matter how much I felt like I wanted to run away from it. And, by having to work, which obviously I had to sustain myself, as many artists do. And I know that's the struggles that many of us have to encounter in this life. I was really struggling for a long time to figure out if that was the ultimate path for me. But, it always came back into my life. And especially in, deciding to do my master's, it felt like the final moment for me to take that leap and understand that this was what I was meant to do and that I would put my all into this work and in this life, as there is nothing else for me.
That's wonderful.
Yes, I'm glad that kind of clarity was afforded to me in this life, because I know a lot of friends and people around me always tell me how lucky I am to know and to have known for so long.
Mm-hmm. And was there ever any other idea you had about professional pursuits? Was there ever anything?
I kind of, growing up, I had a few things I wanted to do. I think it came down to a lot of the same things that artists like, and being a painter, affords me, which is thinking about, color, form, shape. So I was really interested in possibly being a florist or really working into fashion too for the longest time growing up. But I think it really came down to what it brought me and as a whole, as I was kind of growing into myself. And I just felt that being an artist allowed me to not only create things that I love, but also I could have a dialogue with an audience. There's such a part of academia that also comes into play as well. And I'm a big consumer of, literature and reading and, investing into myself in that way and also wanting to share it back after learning. And I just felt like art was the only way to do that and to combine all of these interests together.
Well, congratulations on knowing what you need to do to be happy in life.
Thank you.
So tell us about your practice.
Yes, so I am a painter, and that is the main form of work that I do as of late. But I do also have a social practice that I have been building over the past few years since I've moved to New York. And I've been working with youth, and education is something that I also see as a big part of my practice. But of course, as somebody that has learned painting by trade, let's say in my BFA years and in my master's as well, a lot of what interests me when I paint is thinking about geography, Black geographies and space and landscapes and migration from this perspective of the Asian kind of history in the Americas and the different ways that our history really anchors a lot of the ways Black migrants are being seen as they come to any part of the Americas and the kind of xenophobia that has built around us and really bridging a lot of the past, thinking about maroons and that kind of very Caribbean history and also migrants today and how they have similar ways of thinking and understanding freedom, as maroons were able to capture an idea of freedom before even being told about it, right? Being able to see that they needed to be free and before any emancipation movement and migrants coming to America also looking for a form of freedom, not asking, but really fighting their way through, sometimes having to journey through very difficult landscapes and treacherous kind of geographies.
So early on, taking that into consideration, was there a particular body of work or a sculpture or anything that really influenced you, that really made you think?
I would say that I've always been really, and I'm thinking more of this artist specifically because I've been to one of his biggest shows, or I think his only big show that he's had in America in a long time. Wilfredo Dam's painting Rumblings of the Earth was really one of the first works of his that I came across that not only influenced me in thinking about form, shape, and the body, but also the way that he really afforded for vegetative life and botanical life to kind of come in conversation with kind of like the very imaginative world that he was building. And to me, that kind of created a pathway towards how I started to think about painting and really, I think, created kind of this inhibition to want to understand or create my own process. In seeing that work, I think that really influenced the earlier way of me treating, even painting from a color field to the textures and to the densities of my works now, and really understanding kind of the Caribbean way of approaching painting. And of course, I've always loved looking at Asian painters, one being Hudson and a lot of his way of dealing with kind of a more flatter but still very also rich and dense way of thinking through space and kind of thinking about these Caribbean painters, I think was one of the first few influences in how I built my practice.
Thank you. Do you consider yourself an abstract painter?
I would say I am falling between abstraction and figuration as of now, but I did really start as a figurative painter. So I was doing a lot of figuration until my master's. So when I got in Colombia, I think this is when I started to really allow for a lot of play in the studio, and I really wanted to destabilize everything that I had known prior, and I think using different materials and really gaining another understanding of the tools that I had in terms of, for the longest time, I only did, which I think also dictates a lot of how obviously figuration became very natural. And it was what was affordable to me for the longest time as well. And I think in also making this decision to dedicate myself to doing art, I really wanted to spend time with the medium of oil. And in discovering this medium, I started to really fall in love with what it's capable to do, and, the different kind of layering and, transparency that it can allow. And I think naturally abstraction started to infiltrate into the studio and into my practice. And I still wanted to make sure that the body was present at all times, as I think it acts as kind of a carrier of a lot of the messaging and the stories and the culture that I want to have in the works. But I was very open to this kind of different approach coming into my practice.
Is it a different type of creativity? Are you creative in a different way?
I think so. I find that, when I first started, really, I was using art and my creativity as a way to understand a lot of maybe what a lot of the gaps that were present around, Asian history. And in growing up in my household, my mother and my grandmother, for various reasons, didn't necessarily have as much knowledge on Haiti, or, would kind of try to not speak on it. And it felt like there was kind of like this shame surrounding the idea of home. And I find that when I approached painting or art making earlier on during my BFA years, it was really from the space of wanting to understand and using it as a way to just dive in. So I think naturally I really needed to use my creativity in a very practical manner of, okay, this is the history from A to Z, and how does that show? How can I think through it? How can I, dislodge it? How can I really understand it from head to toe? And I think after I kind of gained a full understanding and knowledge, other things started to spring up into just my interest only towards the material itself. And I think that's how the creativity shifted, because I became not only interested in what I wanted to say, but also what the medium was able to say on its own as well. And that kind of ignited a different way of even entering the studio. I think I had a lot more curiosity for different things now. And I guess it also comes with growing as an artist, and just, the different stages of being an artist as well.
Interesting. And how did your art professors influence your practice?
What's really fun is that in my, education has been pretty straightforward in terms of, even though I studied the arts, I didn't initially think that I would become an artist. When I first got into my Bachelor's of Fine Arts, I really did so in thinking, okay, maybe I'll just end up working in a museum or working in art administration after this, or, being adjacent to it. And then I think really thanks to my professors in my Bachelor's of Fine Arts, I was able to gain a full understanding of what painting was capable to do. And I had a specific professor, Martin Godin, at the University of Ottawa, and just seeing the sheer passion that he had for painting and how it carried him into the classroom with so much he just always had a way of talking about it. And there was just something that I saw that it could bring to me as well.
That's lovely.
And when he was addressing it, speaking on it, and I just felt, okay, this is a tool as well. This is not just a way of creating beautiful objects. There's something that can be conducive to real growth for me there. And I think through that, I really started to take ownership of my relationship with painting in the 4 years that I was there. And naturally, I just couldn't let it go. And in my master's, I definitely met a lot of mentors in the short 2 years that I was there. And each of them brought something very different into my life as an artist that I carry now, whether it is, the more real aspects of thinking about, surviving and sustaining a practice. And also I was the TA of David Antonio Cruz for a semester, and he has a lot of candor and he's a very big, beautiful personality. So I think when the students first came in, they had an idea of how the class would go and might be a bit more leisure-like, but he has so much respect towards painting. And I think what I really admired in being in his presence and having him as a mentor was just seeing also how, even though painting is such an old medium, or considered to be an old medium, and, a lot of people want to break the rules before learning them when it comes to painting, especially now. But to him, it was really important to have those rules set. So the students could eventually, yes, break them, but they needed to first create a real bond and connection to what they were doing and respect it. Respect painting for what it is and what it can do. And whether that is, to him, he would say, you have to always be standing up when you're painting. You can't just sit down. It's even if your body might feel away, it's just like that kind of body to surface kind of respect in some ways. And to me, I love that kind of framework when we think of these tools that we have and that we have the chance to work with every day. And I think that really framed also how I show up in the studio. Even when I'm not having a great day, let's say, but I really try my best to show up in the way that I feel is kind of as whole as possible.
Hey, this conversation is proof that art will save us. It's so necessary.
Very.
Do you feel Black art can be defined?
I don't think Black art can be defined, because if we're thinking about the different diasporas that are speaking and using this idea of Blackness, there's so many ways to go about it, whether it is, from a Black studies perspective or, from me, a Caribbean studies perspective. And I really enjoy the different ways that we speak on Blackness in, a visual form. And I think to define it would be to flatten it. And I really enjoy just speaking on Black art as it is, like a huge kind of array of views and perspective, and that it should remain something that just keeps growing and has all these avenues that people can look into, and not just think of, Black art is just the body and its skin. There's so much ways in which we are embedded into landscape or into food or into, the ways that we've contributed to culture and history and society. And artists find so many ways to showcase that. And I want people to allow Black artists to do that, to do the talking, and for us to define it internally, not for them to make us have to give it a very straight and all-encompassing answer on it, if that makes sense.
Yeah. To me, it all makes sense. What's your process of choosing color?
I definitely am someone that loves to look to the outside, to, as I've mentioned, kind of like land and the earth. So a lot of the colors that kind of find themselves into my paintings reflect a lot of what I see when I walk around, or, when I kind of navigate the world. I kind of want to bring a part of that into the paintings, as paintings are two-dimensional objects and, part of all the art forms. That's kind of like one of the limitations of the work. So I do love to make sure to really think about how does, if you're looking at kind of a field of grass, how there's 20 shades of green that you can show from that, specific field, and how as a painter, it is kind of like my responsibility to bring that to the viewer and to use the gift that I have of having spent so much time looking and understanding color and bridging the beauty that I see for the viewer that gets to experience the paintings, and for them to also realize those kind of differences and the fact that, there's more than what we see when we look, or we look passively, let's say. I think painting allows for that kind of distinction.
What are you excited about right now?
Literature. I think I'm really into fiction as of late, especially for my work right now in the studio. I've been working on a solo, and a lot of the work is stemming from a book that I read 4 years ago, actually. And that book kind of came in at a very timely point in my life. And it's called The Love, Amour by Marie. And it just really changed something in how she speaks about the disorderly feminine, la femme désordre. And in thinking about that, I've kind of brought it into my studio, and I've just been tinkering with her book and having almost a conversation with its main character, Claire. And that has been kind of like the back and forth that I've been having in the studio for the past 6 months. So that's definitely been a big interest of mine as of late.
And you mentioned a show. You have a show coming up?
Yes, so I have a show opening on May 13th at Friedman Gallery in the Bowery in New York.
Wonderful. Great.
And it's called A Symphony of Inger Collet.
What inspired that title?
Yes, so the title actually came, well, there's a first part to the title that I forgot to mention. So it's Cautionary Tales, A Symphony of Inger Collet. So the portion of Cautionary Tales really stems from a lot of my research and, let's say, maybe scholarship around Haiti, and owning a lot of the ways in which we've been perceived and we continue to be punished in some ways for our independence, this idea of caution and the different tales that come with it as well. So each painting actually is kind of bridging us into a different moment. And the kind of Symphony of Inger actually stems from the book Amour, where it is about these three sisters. And the main sister, Claire, actually is our main narrator, and she is the oldest and also has the most responsibilities at home. Their parents passed away, and her two sisters are of lighter skin. She's also darker skin in 1940s Haiti, and there's a lot that she has to contend with socially and politically as well. And because of that, the tone of the book is definitely full of a sense of anger and contempt and envy for her sisters and for everything around her. But even though she is dealing with all of these contradictions and emotions, she is still always showing up with integrity for her sisters and, for the household that she has to maintain, all the sacrifices that she has to go through. And which, in reading that book, to me, felt like a story that I've seen over and over again, whether experienced myself or seeing through my mother or my grandmother, and the kind of interiority that kind of creates around a book like Love by Chauvet, I think is really what I wanted to highlight. And A Symphony of Anger was in reading about this book, I started to look into the other kind of academia of Black women and anger, and which is a wide one, as we know. And Audre Lorde uses of anger, or essay from 1981, I believe, and where she mentions in there, actually, there's a line where she says how Black and brown women have to navigate kind of the world through a symphony, or they have to orchestrate their anger as a symphony of anger in some ways. And when I read that line, it clicked for me in terms of wanting to kind of bridge the two and making it the title, and also kind of the thesis in some ways to this show.
Thank you for sharing that. What do you feel is the purpose of art?
I believe the purpose of art is really to allow for a fuller experience of the world. If not for the artists, I think it's twofold. So for the artists, we're able to create a sense of mastery of the self. And I mean, if anything, that's what life is really about, is mastery of self, and also being able to give back, being able to show up for the people around you. And for the audience, for the people that get to experience art, I think, like mentioned previously, it's kind of creating a fuller sense and connection to all of our senses, because visual art and art as a whole kind of allows for a different way to experience life, whether it is through a painting or through a sculpture, highlighting different aspects of it. I think people really get to have that kind of meditative period with a work, and that allows, hopefully, for them to kind of bridge that back into their life and hopefully get a better sense of what's happening around them in their day-to-day.
Yes. So much to think about. This has been a great conversation. This is the last question.
Mm-hmm.
How do you want your art to impact the way people think?
I think for me, when I first started, it was definitely from this place of wanting to have more conversations with my mother on a lot of what I was learning about home and belonging, and really opening that kind of bridge of conversation with her. And it slowly also became kind of a connector between me and, the diaspora in Canada, and now in the US and in other places now as well. And also just really bridging a lot of the history of Haiti that people love to make it feel fragmented, even though it is fragmented in some ways, but then that becomes an excuse to dismiss it. So I find that art is a way to really collapse a lot of these aspects of history into one space and allow them to converge and to discuss with each other. And it becomes a lot more linear for the audience. And I hope that in seeing some of my works, people can have fuller discussions and ideas about the Caribbean and about Black migration and the Black migrant bodies, and how we have and continue to be erased from a lot of the conversations that are happening on asylum and on so many other aspects of today's political world, even though we are one of the main bodies of contention for a lot of these bigger states that are trying to figure out what do we do with these people, but erase them. So yeah, that's definitely some of the concerns that I have when people come in contact with the work. And also I want them to think of kind of like this idea of the fracture, and how even though we are dealing in politically and historically, we're at a state of fracture as a whole, how can we still manage to rise from it? And I fully believe that Haiti, its history, its migrants, has been proof of that, of how to continue to push through the fracture, even as we're all now dealing with a lot of these kind of questions too.
Well, thank you for the work you do, and thank you for your time today.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you. Thank you for listening to Cerebral Women Art Talks podcast. For additional content, please visit cerebralwomen.com and be sure to follow Cerebral Women on Instagram.